Welcome to Relaxing Subjects. Settle in. Let your shoulders drop a little further into the pillow than they were a moment ago. There is nothing you need to hold up tonight, nothing you have to carry, nothing you have to solve before morning. You can let your hands be heavy. You can let your jaw unclench. Wherever you are, whatever hour it is where you are lying, you have already done the only thing this needs from you, which is to be here, and to breathe, and to listen. Tonight we are going to spend a long, slow time with one small text. It is only a few pages long. A person could read the whole of it in the time it takes a kettle to boil. And yet it contains an image so severe that most gentle channels, the ones that read you soft things to fall asleep to, will never touch it. They skip past it the way you might step around a sharp thing on the floor in the dark. We are not going to skip it. We are going to walk toward it very slowly, and I think by the end you will understand why the person who spoke it reached for something so extreme. And why? Of all the calm and comforting things in this tradition, this might be the one that is actually usable at 2 in the morning when you cannot sleep. Let me begin, though, not with comfort, but with the image itself, because everything tonight grows out of it. Imagine a saw. Not the small kind you might have in a drawer or a shed, the kind with one handle that one person pushes and pulls. Imagine instead a longer blade, a great crosscut blade, with a handle on each end. One man holds one handle, another man holds the other, and they work it between them, back and forth, one pulling while the other lets the blade come toward him, then the motion reversing, the teeth of it travelling the whole length in each direction. This is the tool that 2 people use to bring down a large tree, because one person alone does not have the reach or the rhythm for it. It takes 2, working in turn, trading the pull between them. In the old language of the text, this instrument has a name. It is called the ubhatodaka kakaka. Let me give you those words gently, because I will give you every strange word slowly tonight, and never leave one sitting there cold and unexplained. Kakacha simply means saw, and ubatodaka means more or less with a handle at both ends, a rod on each side, a grip on each side, a 2-handled saw, a saw for 2 men. The scholar whose translation we will trust tonight renders it exactly that way, plainly, a 2-handled saw. And the plainness of it is part of the horror, because there is nothing dressed up about it. It is just a tool. It is just 2 men and a blade and a rhythm. Now hold that image, the 2 men and the long blade, travelling back and forth, and hear the sentence the Buddha built around it. He said, "And I am giving you the wording we will lean on all night. That even if bandits were to sever you savagely, limb by limb, with a 2-handled saw, the one who gave rise to a mind of hate toward them would not be carrying out his teaching." Sit with just that for a moment. Not the meaning of it yet, just the picture. A living body. Not a quick blow, not a single stroke of a sword that ends a thing in one motion, but a saw worked slowly by 2 people. In turn, limb by limb. It is, by a wide margin, the most extreme physical image in this entire body of scripture. There are thousands of pages in this tradition, thousands of discourses, and in all of them there is nothing more violent than this one picture. When people who have spent their whole lives with these texts want to point to the outer limit, the very edge, the worst case anyone ever put into words here, this is the passage they point to. The simile of the saw. And here is the first turn, the thing I want you to hear before you drift too far. Because if you hear only the saw and nothing else, you will have heard the part that frightens people and none of the part that heals them. In that scene, in that terrible picture of the two men and the long blade, there is a test being given, a pass and a fail. Someone in that scene fails the Buddha's teaching. And your whole life you have probably assumed, if you ever heard this line at all, that the one who fails is the bandit, the one holding the saw. Surely the person doing the sawing is the one who has gone wrong. But read the sentence again, slowly, the way we will read everything tonight. He who gave rise to a mind of hate toward them would not be carrying out my teaching. He, the one who feels the hate, not the one wielding the blade. The person being tested, the person who can pass or fail in that sentence, is not the bandit at all. It is the one being cut. It is, in other words, you, the failure, if there is a failure, has your name on it, not theirs. I know how that sounds on first hearing. It sounds unfair, almost cruel, as though the person being harmed is being handed one more burden on top of the harm. Hold that objection. Do not let go of it. Keep it right there beside you, because it is the exact objection this whole text is built to answer. And by the end of these hours together, I think it will have quietly turned into something else in your hands. Not a burden, a kind of freedom you were not expecting. For now, just let the strangeness of it sit there. In the worst scene the tradition ever imagined, the one being weighed and measured is not the one doing the cutting. It is the one being cut. Let me tell you what this text is so you know exactly where we are standing. It is called the Kakacupama Sutta. There is that word again, kakacha, the saw, joined to upama, which means a simile, a comparison, and it is like this. So the whole title means, quite simply, the discourse of the simile of the saw. It is the 21st discourse in a collection called the Majjhima Nikaya, which is one of the great gathered collections of these teachings, the middle-length discourses, the ones that are neither very short nor very long but sit in that middle register, long enough to develop a thought fully and slowly, the way we are going to develop this one. So when you hear people refer to it in shorthand, they say MN 21, Majjhima Nikaya, Discourse 21, the simile of the saw. And there is one more detail of where it sits that I love, because the people who arranged these texts long ago were quietly telling you something by where they filed it. This discourse opens a particular chapter of the collection, a section called the Opama Vagga. Vagga means a division, a chapter, a grouping, and Opama comes from that same root as opama, the word for simile. So the Opama Vagga is quite literally the division of similes, the chapter of teaching images, the place where the tradition gathered its great comparisons, its pictures, the vivid things it used to make an idea land in the body and not just in the head. And this discourse, the saw, is placed right there among them, given pride of place as one of the tradition's central images. The people who kept these words did not treat the saw as an embarrassment to be hidden. They filed it with the treasures. They thought the picture was doing exactly what a great teaching image is supposed to do. Now, I want to stop building the frame for a moment and talk to one person. Maybe it is you. Maybe it isn't, and if it isn't, you can simply rest and listen, and none of this will ask anything of you. But maybe you are lying there tonight carrying a particular person. Not people in general, not the state of the world. One person. Someone who did something to you, or said something to you, or took something from you, or treated you in a way that you have never quite been able to set down. And it comes back at odd hours. It comes back most at this hour, the small hours, when the house is quiet and there is nothing else loud enough to cover it, and the whole scene replays itself, what they did, what you should have said, what you did say, the look on their face, the way it landed in your chest and never fully left. And here is the part that I think has made it worse, not better. Everyone has told you to forgive them. Everyone has told you to let it go. Well-meaning people, tired of watching you carry it, or uncomfortable with your anger, or simply reaching for the only phrase our culture keeps in its pocket for these moments. Let it go. Forgive and forget. Don't let them live rent-free in your head. You've probably heard every version of it. And every version has felt, quietly, like an insult. Because what you hear underneath, just let it go, is pretend it was fine. What you hear underneath you need to forgive is the thing that happened to you doesn't get to matter, and your job now is to act as though it never happened, or as though it was acceptable. And some deep, stubborn, honest part of you refuses. It refuses to lie about what happened. It will not call the wound a scratch. And so you are caught between two impossible things, the people telling you to release it and the part of you that will not pretend. And, in the gap between them, you do not sleep. I want to tell you something, gently. And then I want to spend the rest of tonight showing you that it is true from inside the text itself, not as my opinion, but as what the words actually say. This teaching is not going to ask you to pretend it was fine. It is not going to ask you to forgive. The word forgiveness does not appear in it. It is not going to tell you the thing that happened was acceptable. In fact, the Buddha in this very discourse calls the bandits savage. He does not soften what they do. He does not ask you to soften it either. He is not going to tell you to stay near the person who harmed you, and he is not going to tell you to leave. He says nothing at all about that. He draws exactly one line, one single distinction, and it turns out to be the only instruction in the whole matter that was ever actually within your power to follow. And it is this: what they did is one event, already finished, already belonging to them. What you become about it, the hate you carry, is a second and separate event, and that one belongs to you. And the teaching only ever concerns itself with the second one. Not with them, not with what they did, not with whether they deserve anything from you. Only with the second injury, the one you may still be performing on yourself, night after night, at this hour. That is why this text is usable at 2 a.m, when let it go is not. Because let it go asks you to do something to the memory itself, to somehow reach back and dissolve the fact of what happened, which you cannot do and should not have to. This asks something narrower and far more possible. It asks nothing about them at all, not one thing. It only turns, very quietly, to what is happening inside you right now, tonight, in the dark, and asks whether that second event, the one with your name on it, might be set down. Not the first. The first is theirs. Just the second. We are going to get there slowly. We have all night. I am not going to rush you toward it, because the whole point of a text like this is that it must be walked, not summarized, and the walking is itself the medicine. If someone just tells you the conclusion, the harm they did, and your reaction are two things, it sounds like a fortune cookie, and it changes nothing. But if we go through the actual discourse, the actual occasion that prompted it, the actual little story the Buddha tells inside it, the actual list of the ways speech comes at us, the 4 gentler images that come before the terrible one, and then the saw itself read in full, slowly, then the distinction is not a slogan anymore. It is something you have lived through in the space of a night, and lived through things stay. Before we go any further, let me tell you which words we are trusting. Because in a text like this, the exact wording matters, and I do not want you drifting off wondering whether I am inventing any of it. The translation we will lean on all night is an English one that has become the standard, the one you would find in a serious library or a monastery bookshelf. It is called the Middle-Length Discourses of the Buddha, and it is the complete Majjhima Nikaya rendered into English. It was begun by a monk named Bhikkhu Amoli. He was born Osbert Moore, an Englishman, born in the year 1905 and died in 1960, and much of the enormous labour of translation was his before his life ended. The work was then taken up, edited and completed by another monk, Bhikkhu Bodhi, who was born Geoffrey Block in Brooklyn in 1944. Between the two of them, one English, one American, the translation was finished and published by Wisdom Publications in the year 1995. When I read you the Saw passage in full, later tonight, it is their wording I will be giving you. Amoli and Bodhi. 1995, that is the trustworthy source. The one to hold in mind if you ever want to check a word for yourself in the daylight, and if you would like to read it tonight or tomorrow without owning that book, there is a free version too, done more recently by a monk named Bhikkhu Sujato, and it lives on a website called Sutta Central, where a great many of these discourses have been placed for anyone to read at no cost. His title for it is the plain English one, The Simile of the Saw. His rendering of the terrible line runs a little differently in its wording, but says the same thing, that even if low bandits were to sever you limb from limb, anyone who had a malevolent thought on that account would not be following the Buddha's instructions. So there are two doors into this same text, one on a bookshelf and one on a screen, and both of them will show you the same passage, and neither of them will show you the word forgiveness anywhere in it, because it is not there. I want you to notice already how careful we are being. This is a text about Scripture, and I am not going to blur the Scripture into self-help while you drift. When I read you the words of the discourse, they will be the words of the discourse. When I tell you what later teachers thought it meant, I will tell you that it is later teachers, tradition, commentary, not the Buddha's own mouth. And when I name the modern misreadings, this means you should just accept abuse, or this means you have to forgive. I will name them as misreadings and set them to the side, not smuggle them in. You can relax into this knowing that I am not going to hand you an interpretation dressed up as the sacred text. The passage will always be the passage. Everything else will be labelled as what it is. So here is where we stand, at the mouth of it, before we walk in. We have the image. Two men, one blade, a body cut limb by limb, the Ubatodaka Kakacha, the two-handled saw, the most extreme picture in the whole tradition. We have the strange reversal that the one being tested in that picture is not the one holding the saw, but the one being cut, and that the failure, if it comes, has your name on it, and not theirs. We have the location of the text, MN 21, the Kakacupama Sutta, sitting proudly in the division of similes among the tradition's great teaching images. We have the trustworthy sources, Amoli and Bodhi in 95, and the free door of Sujato on Sutta Central. And we have you, whoever you are tonight, perhaps carrying one particular person, tired of being told to forgive, refusing to pretend. Caught in the gap, awake at the hour when the gap is loudest. And I have made you a promise, which I will keep before the night is over, that this text does not ask you to pretend it was fine, that it does not ask you to forgive, that it does not call the harm acceptable, that it will not tell you to stay and will not tell you to go, that it draws one line only, between the thing that was done to you and the thing you become about it, and lays its whole hand on the second, because the second is the only one that was ever yours. But we are not going to leap to that yet. A leap would not hold. We are going to earn it, slowly, and the earning is the rest. So let us not go on to the next thing just now. Let us pause here for a little while, at the doorway, before we step inside the discourse itself. Take a slow, deep breath. Let it be a real one, all the way down, the kind you have not quite taken all day. Feel the pillow under your head, the exact temperature of the air on your face, the small weight of the blanket. Notice, if you can, that in this precise moment, in this room, at this hour, nothing is being done to you. The person you carry is not here. The scene is not happening now. It happened then, in another place, and here, now, there is only the dark and your breath, and a voice reading you something old and slow. That is all. You do not have to work anything out tonight. You do not have to decide anything about anyone. You do not have to forgive, and you do not have to refuse to forgive. All of that can wait for a daylight you do not have to reach yet. For now there is only this, the breath going down and coming back, the body growing heavier, the doorway we are standing in, and all the rest of the night ahead of us to walk through it slowly. And when you are ready, and only then, we will step inside, and I will tell you the small, ordinary, almost embarrassing reason this most extreme of all images was ever spoken at all. Because it did not begin with bandits, it did not begin with a saw. It began, as so many of these things do, with one person getting angry on behalf of something they were attached to. Breathe. Let yourself sink. We will continue together in a moment. Let me tell you then how it started, because this is the part that surprises everyone, and it is where we are going to spend our time next. You would expect a teaching that ends in bandits, and a saw to have begun with something enormous. A war, a massacre, a great crime, something that would justify reaching for the most violent picture in the language, and it did not. It began with a monk. One single monk, whose name, as the tradition remembers it, was Mollia Faguna. I will give you his name again slowly, because we will keep company with him for a while, and I want it to feel familiar rather than foreign. Mollia Faguna, a monk, a member of the community, a person who had left the ordinary household life to follow this path. And his trouble, the thing that set all of this in motion, was not violence. It was not cruelty. It was something far smaller and far more recognizable, something you may know from your own life, even if you have never worn robes or lived in a monastery. His trouble was that he had grown too close, too attached, and that his attachment had begun to come out sideways as anger on behalf of the people he was attached to. He was keeping company, the text tells us, too closely with the bhikkhunis, which is the word for the nuns, the women who had likewise left the household life for this same path. There is nothing wrong with the nuns, and the text does not fault them. The trouble was in the shape of his attachment. He had become bound up with them, and the sign of that bondedness was this. If anyone criticized the nuns while he was within earshot, he became angry. He quarrelled. He rose up to defend them, not with calm, but with heat. And it went the other way too. If anyone criticized him in the nuns' hearing, then they became angry on his behalf, and they quarrelled and defended him with the same heat. A little knot of attachment, tightening, and every time an unkind word came near it, the knot pulled, and someone flared. Now stay with how ordinary that is, how human. This is not a monster. This is a person who cared about certain people so much that he could not bear to hear a word against them, and whose care had curdled, without his quite noticing, into a readiness to fight. And if you look honestly at your own heart, at the person you are carrying tonight, I wonder whether some part of what keeps you awake is exactly this same shape. Not hatred of a villain, but a fierce, aching attachment to how things should have been, to the person you thought someone was, to the version of the story where you were treated the way you deserved. And every time the real memory comes near that attachment, the knot pulls, and you flare alone in the dark on behalf of what you loved. That is where the most extreme image in the whole tradition comes from. Not from a battlefield, from a knot of attachment in one ordinary heart. And that is where we will begin, slowly, next, with what the Buddha actually said to this monk, and with a small, sharp, almost domestic story he told about a woman everyone believed was gentle, and the single morning that revealed whether she truly was. But not yet. For now, just rest. Let the name Molia Faguna float there without effort. Let the knot in your own chest, if there is one, simply be seen for tonight. Not untied, not judged, just seen and held in the same soft light we are holding everything else. There is nothing to fix while you fall asleep. There is only the slow unfolding of an old and careful text, and all the hours of the night still ahead of us to unfold it in. And when you are ready, only when you are ready, let us give this old text its proper name, because it does have one, and the name matters. In the collection of the Buddha's middle-length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya, this is the 21st. Scholars write it simply as MN 21. Its Pali name is the Kakacupama Sutta. Kakacha is a saw. Upama is a simile, a likeness, a picture held up beside a truth, so you can finally see the truth's shape. So the whole name means, quite plainly, the simile of the saw. And it does not sit just anywhere in the collection. It opens a chapter the tradition calls the Opama Vagga, the division of similes, the section where the great teaching images are kept. The way you might keep the most treasured tools together on one shelf. The people who preserved this text for 2,500 years looked at it and decided it belonged among the images they most wanted remembered. They filed the saw with the treasures. That alone should tell you they did not think it was about cruelty. They thought it was about something worth keeping. Now there is a particular listener I keep thinking of tonight, and it may be you. It is very late, later than you meant it to be. It is somewhere near 2 in the morning, that hour when the house has gone completely still and there is no one left to perform calm for, and the same face keeps arriving behind your eyes. Uninvited, the person who did the thing, said the thing, took the thing, left the way they left. And around that face, like a chorus you did not ask for, are all the voices that have told you, gently or impatiently, over months or years, the same 3 words. Let it go. Forgive. Move on. And you have tried. You have honestly tried, and every time some clear, stubborn, unbroken part of you refuses, because you hear inside those 3 words a demand you cannot meet. A demand to pretend that what happened was somehow acceptable, to smooth your face into a smile over a wound that has not closed, and you will not lie about it, not even to fall asleep. So you lie awake instead, caught between the people who say forgive and the part of you that says never, and no one, not one of them, has ever told you what let it go is actually supposed to mean, or how a real human being is meant to do it without lying about what was done. I want to tell you something before we go one line further into this text. This sutta is not on the side of the people telling you to forgive. That is the thing almost everyone gets wrong about it, and it is the exact thing that has kept it from you. And here is the reveal we have been circling, the one that changes the shape of the whole night. In the scene at the center of this discourse, the most extreme scene the Buddha ever painted, bandits with a saw worked by two men, one at each end, pulling it back and forth through a living body, severing it slowly, limb by limb. There is a person in that picture who fails the Buddha's test. And it is not the bandits. He does not put the bandits on trial at all. He calls what they do savage, and he leaves it standing there, unexcused, a finished and terrible fact. The one the test is watching, the only one who's passing or failing the whole teaching tracks, is the one being harmed. It is you. But, and this is everything, only if you hate. The failure, if there is a failure in that scene, has your name on it and not theirs. Sit with how strange that is. He does not ask you to approve of the saw. He asks you, in the middle of the worst thing imaginable, to keep your own mind free of the second cut, the one you make in yourself. We will read the exact words, and I want you to hear them from a source you can trust, not from me loosely remembering, so let me name the book. The standard English translation, the one on the good shelves, is called The Middle-Length Discourses of the Buddha. It was first drafted by an Englishman, born Oswald Moore, who became the monk Bhikkhu Amoli and died in 1960, the work unfinished. It was then edited and completed by another monk, born Geoffrey Block in Brooklyn, who became Bhikkhu Bodhi, and it was published by Wisdom Publications in 1995. That is the edition to trust. And if you would like to read it for yourself, tonight or some morning, without buying anything at all, there is a free modern translation by the monk Bhikkhu Sujato on a site called Sutta Central, where he titles it simply The Simile of the Saw. We will lean on both, and I will tell you which is which as we go, so that you always know when you are hearing the text and when you are hearing me. But that is for the slow hours ahead. Right now, let us pause here for a moment. Take a slow, deep breath in, and let it leave you unhurried. Notice the weight of your body against the bed, how it is already being held completely without any effort from you. You do not need to decide anything tonight about the person behind your eyes. You do not need to forgive them, and you do not need to hate them. For now there is only the breath, and the dark, and an old, careful text with its true name, waiting, and when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a small detail that matters before we enter the teaching itself. Every discourse in the collection called the Majjhima Nikaya, and there are 152 of them, begins with a specific occasion, a person, a place, a thing that happened or nearly happened or was happening that made the Buddha stop and speak. The doctrine does not float in a vacuum. It arrives because something human and ordinary made it necessary. And in the case of the Kakacupama Sutta, the simile of the saw, the occasion is not a dramatic crisis. It is not a war or a betrayal or a death. It is one monk with one very recognizable problem. His name is Mulya Phaguna. The Pali text does not give us his whole story. We are not told where he was born, or how long he had been a monk, or what he looked like. We are given only this: Mulya Phaguna had become too close with the bhikkhunis. The bhikkhunis were the nuns, the women who had also renounced household life and taken up the training under the Buddha's teaching. And Phaguna, for reasons the text does not need to explain, had come to feel something for them that was more than simple brotherhood. Not, the text implies, a transgression in the gross sense, more something quieter and more familiar, a particular tenderness, a particular loyalty. The kind that makes you feel, when someone criticizes the people you love, that they are criticizing you. Because when anyone criticized the bhikkhunis in Faguna's hearing, he became angry. And he quarreled with them. And when anyone criticized Faguna in the presence of the bhikkhunis, they became angry, and they quarreled with others on his behalf. You have seen this. Perhaps you have been this. That circuit where someone speaks against the person you care for, and the indignation rises in your chest before you have even thought about it. Not quite reason, not quite decision, just a flare, a heat, a gathering of the self to defend what belongs to it. It does not feel like a fault when it happens. It feels like loyalty. It feels like love. But the Buddha, when he heard of this, summoned Faguna. And what the Buddha said to him is the seed from which everything in this discourse grows. It is the reason the most violent image in the entire Pali Canon gets spoken. It is worth hearing slowly. He said, Faguna, you should train yourself so that your mind remains unaffected. He said, even if someone were to strike one of the bhikkhunis, with the hand, with a clod of earth, with a stick, or with a knife, if that happened in your very presence, you should still abandon the desires and thoughts of the household life. Even then, your mind should remain unaffected. You should utter no evil words. You should abide compassionate for his welfare, that is, compassionate for the welfare of the one striking, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. Now that is the instruction. It is not a mild one. To witness something done against someone you care for, and to remain without hate, without evil speech, while extending care even toward the one who did it, this is not easy. And when the Buddha sets it as the standard, Faguna might have reasonably thought, this is already asking the impossible. This is already the hardest thing. It is not. The Buddha has not yet arrived at the hardest thing. The hardest thing is coming, but not yet. What the Buddha is doing with Faguna is locating the problem precisely. Faguna's anger, his quarrelling, his defensiveness, these arose from attachment. The bhikkhunis were people he had drawn close, people who had become extensions of the territory of his self, so that insults to them registered as insults to him, and praise of him registered in them. This is what attachment does. It expands the self outward until it includes other people, until their treatment becomes your pain and your honor becomes their war. And then, because the self is fragile and the world is not gentle, you spend a great deal of your time afraid and inflamed. The monk on the cushion feels this the same as the person lying in the dark feels this. The monk's bhikkhunis, the person's partner, or the friend or the child, the mechanism is the same. Someone you have made part of yourself is treated badly, and the anger comes up wearing the coat of love. The Buddha is not here to take the love away. He is not asking Faguna to stop caring for the nuns. He is asking him to notice the difference between care and the flaring, quarrelsome protectiveness that does more to wound the one who carries it than to protect the one it claims to defend. A mind of loving kindness without inner hate. That is the phrase the Buddha uses here, and it is the phrase that will come back again and again like a thread through every section of this teaching. We will hear it many more times tonight. Notice it when it arrives. It does not say, a mind without feeling. It says, a mind without inner hate. Let us rest here for just a moment before we go further. Take a slow, deep breath. Let the air come into the body as if the body were grateful for it, because it is. And let the breath leave again, slow, nothing held back. You do not have to do anything with what you just heard. You do not have to apply it. You do not have to grade yourself against it. It is simply an old instruction offered in a room somewhere in ancient India to one particular monk with one particular ordinary failing. And we are listening, the way you might listen through a doorway to something true being said to someone else. And notice, quietly, that it is also true for you. When you are ready, we will continue together. There is a story the Buddha tells before the saw appears. It is not the saw's story. It is a quieter story, and in many ways a more devastating one, because it is about a woman who thought she was already there. Her name was Vedehika. She lived in Land, a city in what is now the state of Bihar in India, a city the Buddha knew well, a city where he taught many times. And Vedehika had a reputation. The kind of reputation that is given to you by the people around you, the ones who watch how you move through your days and decide, collectively, what kind of person you are. Her reputation was this: kind, gentle, peaceful. This was not a small thing. In the world of the Sutta, and in most worlds, this kind of character report from one's neighbours is a form of wealth. It means the people who see you daily have concluded that you are safe to be near, that your voice does not rasp, that your hands are not dangerous, that when you are displeased, your displeasure has a flaw, a limit, a place it does not cross. Vedehika believed this about herself. There is no indication in the text that she was pretending. She was, by all available evidence, a woman of even temper and warm speech. She had never shouted at anyone, never raised her hand, never let a hard day become someone else's hard evening. She was kind. She was gentle. She was peaceful. She also had a servant. The servant's name was Kali, and Kali was by any measure excellent at her work. The text tells us she was skilled, diligent, careful. The house ran well, because Kali made it run well. She was up early. The work was done before it needed to be asked for. Vedehika had, in Kali, something that many households would have envied, a person who made the day go smoothly without being reminded. But Kali was watching. Kali was thinking something that perhaps only someone in her position could think, the person who watches the one with a reputation, from close up, from below. And what she was thinking was this: is my mistress truly peaceful? Or does she only appear peaceful because I do everything correctly, and she has never had reason not to be? It is a precise question. It is, in fact, a philosophical question. And Kali decided to find out. One morning, Kali rose late. That is all. She simply did not get up when she always got up. She let the morning begin without her. The things that were always done were not done. The house that always ran smoothly did not run smoothly. And Vedehika, who had always been kind, gentle, and peaceful, Vedehika frowned. She showed displeasure. The text says it plainly. With no dramatics, she frowned, and her displeasure was visible. No words, not this first time, just the expression of a face that was not getting what it had come to expect. Just the interior landscape, made briefly exterior. Kali noted this, and Kali thought, there it is. She has it. She keeps it controlled, because I have always given her no reason to let it loose. But it is there. The next morning, Kali rose late again. This time, Vedehika spoke. Angry words. The text does not tell us what they were, and we do not need to know. They were the words that come when a displeasure that went unaddressed yesterday is still there this morning, and now it has been doubled. The tone of a person who felt justified in her quiet anger the day before and feels more justified now. Sharp, probably. Bitter, perhaps. the words of someone whose patience is fraying and who is no longer choosing to conceal it. Kali noted this too. And still she rose late a third time. This time, Vedehika struck her on the head with the rolling pin. The Pali word is agasi. It is also sometimes translated as a door bolt or a pin, a long, hard domestic implement. It does not matter precisely which. What matters is that it was hard, and that it landed on Kali's head, and that it broke the skin and drew blood. Kali, bleeding, ran out into the neighbourhood. She showed the neighbours her head. She said, in effect, "Look. Look at the work of the gentle one. Look at what the kind and peaceful woman has done." And Vedehika's reputation, which she had carried her entire life, was gone. Now, let us stay with this a moment, because the Buddha does not tell this story as a piece of gossip or as a warning to mistresses everywhere. He is making a specific, technical argument about the nature of gentleness itself. He is saying, Vedehika's gentleness was real, and Vedehika's gentleness was not yet proven. Both things were true at once. The man who has never been tested with fire does not know whether he is fireproof. He may believe it, his neighbours may believe it. It may even be that he has walked close to fire many times and felt no particular fear. But the test is the fire. And the test of gentleness is not the day when everything goes smoothly. It is the day when the disagreeable thing touches you. The word the Buddha uses, and this is careful, worth holding, is disagreeable courses of speech. When disagreeable courses of speech touch a person. When the thing that rasps, the thing that goes against the grain. The thing that is untimely or harsh or simply not what you wanted, when that thing arrives and finds you, that is when you learn what you are. Vedehika learned she was not yet what she thought she was. Kali was not wrong to test her from a certain angle. From a certain angle, Kali did Vedehika a service in the way that reveals always do a kind of service even when they cost something. Vedehika could not have corrected what she did not know was there. Now she knows. Now she has something real to work with. A flaw made visible is not the same as a flaw that cannot heal. But that is a gloss. That is me. The text does not follow Vedehika further. It does not tell us whether she found the servant, tended to the wound, asked forgiveness, or spent the rest of her life in shame. It does not tell us anything more about her at all, because her story is not the point. Her story is an image. It is a mirror held up to the teaching. To illuminate one thing, a person is called gentle, and peaceful, and kind, only so long as the disagreeable thing has not yet arrived. The moment it arrives, the moment the rasping word, or the unwelcome behaviour, or the person who knows exactly how to wound you, the moment that touches you, the reputation dissolves. What is left is what is actually there. The question is, what do you want to have there? This is what Faguna needed to understand. He was, very likely, a kind person in ordinary times. He probably was gentle with the bhikkhunis. He probably was careful and warm and sincere. None of that was a performance. But when someone spoke against them, the anger came up hard and fast, and the quarrelling began, and the gentleness, whatever form it took on ordinary days, was gone. Because his peace had a condition. His peace held only so long as the people he loved were not touched. And conditions are a kind of debt. Every conditional peace is a peace that will eventually be called upon. You do not know when, and you do not get to choose the form. But it will come. The teaching does not say, love no one. That would be its own failure, a sterile safety, a kind of nothing mistaken for peace. The teaching says the love is not the problem. The attachment that turns love into territory, That is where the anger lives. The love can stay, the territory needs to go. Take a slow, deep breath here. Let the chest rise and fall. If you can, soften the shoulders, just slightly, the way they soften in the dark when the day finally releases its grip. You have been carrying something tonight. You know what it is. And right now, right this moment, you do not have to carry it or put it down. You just have to breathe. That is enough. That is, in fact, exactly right. When you are ready, we will continue. Now, you might be wondering something. You might be lying there thinking, yes, all of this is real. The monk with his anger, the servant with her split scalp, the mistress with her demolished reputation. I see it. I feel it. But what does any of it have to do with me? What I am carrying is not a feeling of protectiveness. It is not even, exactly, anger in the way anger usually feels. It is something more like a permanent residue, a sediment. The thing that happened is over, and the person who did it is not here, and yet the harm somehow still is, still waking me up, still sitting on my chest at 2 a.m. What do I do with that? This is exactly the question the Kakacupama Sutta is built to answer. Not the polished-over, smoothed-away version that says practice forgiveness and move on. The actual question, what do I do with this thing that happened, this specific real harm done by a specific person that I cannot unfeel and cannot undo and cannot pretend away? But before we reach the sore, and we will reach it, slowly and with care, the Buddha does one more thing. He gives the assembly a framework, a way of organizing what is being asked. Because so far, everything has been about the occasion, about Phaguna, about Vedahika. The teaching has been illustrated through story. Now the Buddha sets out the bones, the scaffold beneath the stories. And it is worth hearing, because it will make the saw land differently when we arrive there. He says, when others speak to you, there are 5 ways that speech can arrive. He does not ask you, when the speech arrives, to first adjudicate which kind it is. He lists all 5, and then he gives the same response for all 5. That repetition, the same answer 5 times, is the structure of the argument. It is deliberate. Notice it when we move through it together. The first way. Speech may be timely or it may be untimely. There is a word in Pali for each, klena for timely, aklena for untimely. A timely word is one that arrives at the right moment, that fits the occasion, that a reasonable person in your position might be ready to hear. An untimely word is the opposite, the criticism that arrives when you are already exhausted. The confrontation at the worst possible moment, the thing said when you had no resources left to receive it. Both happen. And both, the Buddha says, call for the same response in the listener. The second way. Speech may be true, or it may be false. Batena for true, abtena for false. This one matters, because people often feel that they have more standing to be hurt by a false accusation than a true one, that the injustice of the falsehood grants them more permission for rage, while a true critique should be humbly accepted. The Buddha does not sort it this way. True speech, false speech, same response in the listener. The third way. Speech may be gentle, or it may be harsh. Sahina for gentle, Farusena for harsh. This is perhaps the most obvious axis, the difference between the difficult thing said carefully and the difficult thing said cruelly. Between criticism offered from evident care and criticism launched as a weapon. You have been on the receiving end of both, and you know how different they feel in the body. The harsh one lands differently. It bruises somewhere that gentleness does not. And yet, same response. The fourth way. Speech may be beneficial, connected with good, as the text puts it, or it may be harmful, connected with ill, with no good. Athasahitena for beneficial, anathasahitena for harmful. This is the question of intent and effect. Does the speech, whatever its form, actually serve something good? Or is it designed, or likely, to wound? A word meant to help, however clumsily delivered. A word meant to diminish, however smoothly said. Same response. The fifth way. Speech may come from a mind of loving kindness, or it may come from inner hate. Metasit, the mind of met, the mind of loving kindness, on one side, and on the other, dosanta, inner hate, the mind that wishes you harm, even if it conceals it beneath pleasant speech. This final axis is the deepest one. It is about what lives at the root of the words, beneath any surface reading. And still, same response. Notice what this means. The instruction is not, wait until you can tell which kind of speech it is, and then calibrate your response. The instruction is, whatever kind it is, your response, the ground condition of your mind, does not change. This is either maddening or liberating, depending on where you are when you hear it. It might sound maddening. It might sound like being asked to be a stone or a wall or something less than human. The cruelty and the kindness receive the same inner response? The false accusation and the true one? What then is the point of discernment, of judgment, of knowing the difference? But here is what the instruction does not say. It does not say, respond the same way, outwardly, to all five. It says, your mind remains unaffected, and you utter no evil words, and you abide compassionate for their welfare, with loving kindness, without inner hate. The inner ground, the soil from which your response grows, does not shift with the weather of other people's speech. But what you then choose to do or say or leave can be as varied as the situation demands. The unaffected mind is not the paralyzed mind, it is the stable one, the one that can see clearly, because it is not flooded. The Buddhist teacher Bhikkhu Bodhi, the one who completed the translation we are leaning on tonight, he has written about what met is, and is not. And what he makes clear is that met, loving kindness, is not warmth in the personal sense. It is not affection, not liking, not closeness. It is the wish that a being be well and free from suffering. That is all. And that wish, extended even towards someone who harmed you, is not a statement that the harm was acceptable. It is a statement about your own mind. It is a choice not to add hatred to a world that already has enough. You can wish that the person who hurt you were free from the thing that made them capable of hurting you, the fear, the cruelty, the small-heartedness, whatever it was, without wanting their company, without calling what they did fine, without letting them near you again. The two things are separate. But we are moving faster than the text moves. The saw is still ahead of us. The four great similes still need to be placed in your hands. And there is a reason the Buddha does not go straight from the 5 aspects of speech to the saw. He builds the ladder first. He does not ask you to reach the ceiling by leaping. Let us pause again here. This is a good place to rest. Take a slow breath. Just one. And let it be slow and full. If your mind has been working, following the thread of the teaching, that is fine, that is what the mind does, and it is not a fault. But the breath does not need the mind to work. The breath is already happening, has been happening this whole time, whether you attended to it or not. Notice it now. Notice the simple animal fact of it. In and out. The body keeping itself alive, quietly, without your permission or your effort. You do not need to agree with everything you have heard tonight. You do not need to believe it, or apply it, or decide what it means for you. You only need to be here, in the dark, breathing, while an old text unfolds itself. That is, right now, the whole of what is being asked. Notice what has begun to soften, if anything has. Notice if the shoulders have dropped even slightly from where they were, if the jaw has loosened a little, if the forehead is a degree less tight. These are small things, and they do not require your attention. But they are happening underneath everything, the way things in a river are always moving whether you watch them or not. And when you are ready, when the breath has settled, when the body has accepted another moment of being held by the bed, we will continue together. There is no hurry. The teaching has waited 2,500 years. It can wait a little longer while you breathe. So, Vedahika, Kali, the rolling pin and the blood and the ruined reputation. Faguna summoned, instructed, shown the territory of his own attachment. And the Buddha, having established all of this, turns to what he actually wants to say. He has set up the human ground, the monk who snaps in defense of the ones he loves, the woman of good character who is undone by the first real test. He has given the 5-fold map of how speech arrives. He has made it clear that the thing being measured is not the content of what is said to you, but the condition of what is in you when it arrives. Now he builds a staircase, and the staircase is made of images, not arguments, not doctrinal propositions, images, things you can hold in the body, in the quiet of a room, in the small hours, things that do not require you to understand them so much as to feel them and to let them settle. There are 4 of them, 4 rungs ascending before the 5th rung, that is the saw. He places them in order for a reason. Each one is larger than the last. Each one is more absolute, more complete, more beyond the reach of whatever a person could throw at it. He is calibrating your sense of what is possible. He is doing something that a very good teacher does. He is enlarging your imagination before he makes the final demand. He is showing you in image after image what a mind that has arrived would look like, so that when the saw appears, your imagination is already stretched enough to receive it. The first image. The great earth. Suppose a man came with a hoe and a basket, and his intention was to make the great earth be without earth, to dig and scatter and spit upon it and pour things upon it, saying, "Be without earth, be without earth." Would he succeed? No, he would not. The earth is too deep and too vast. There is no pile he could remove, no quantity of labour he could perform. That would make the earth be without earth. However long he dug, however many baskets he carried, however earnestly he insisted that the earth should be otherwise, the earth would simply continue to be the earth. Train, the Buddha says, to have a mind like the great earth. This is a mind that cannot be made to be without itself, that cannot be made into something it is not, by someone who wants it to be otherwise. A mind that holds steady, not because it is rigid, not because it refuses to feel or change, but because it is rooted at a depth that no ordinary force can reach. The earth absorbs everything that lands on it. Rain, drought, fire, cultivation, neglect, it receives all of it, and it remains the earth. A mind like the great earth. The word for earth in Pali is pathav. Let it rest there a moment, that sound. Pathav, something that falls in the lowest register of the word, something heavy and trustworthy, the ground beneath every structure anyone has ever built. The second image. Open space. Suppose a man came with dyes, red, yellow, blue, the colours of paint, and his intention was to paint pictures on empty space. He would take his brush and raise it to the air and make his strokes and try to make the space take the colour. Would he succeed? No, space offers nothing for the paint to take hold of. It has no surface, it cannot be coloured or stained or decorated. It does not resist the brush, it simply isn't the kind of thing that receives paint. The effort slides off it, not because space is hard, but because space is open. The paint has nothing to meet. Train to have a mind like empty space. The Pali word here is sa, the sky, the open air, the formless expanse in which everything occurs but which is itself not a thing. A mind like sa is a mind that cruelty cannot stain, not because the cruelty is stopped at the door, but because there is no door, only openness, and the cruelty passes through. It lands nowhere because there is no hard place to land. These two images together, the earth and the sky, already form a kind of paradox. The earth holds everything and cannot be depleted. The sky holds nothing and cannot be stained, and both are the same instruction, a mind that is both fully grounded and fully open, stable and spacious, present and undefended. The third image, the river Ganges. Suppose a man came with a burning torch of grass, and his intention was to heat the river Ganges, to set the great river on fire, to scorch it and dry it up. He would bring his torch to the bank and hold it toward the water. The river would continue to flow. Not because the river fought the torch, not because the river mounted a defence, but because the Ganges is larger than a torch, cooler than a flame, deeper than the heat of a burning handful of dry grass. The effort is simply not proportionate to what it is attempting. The river, moving on its endless course toward the sea, does not need to resist the torch. The torch is not a serious proposition. Train to have a mind like the river Ganges. The Gag, the great river, the one 100 generations have come to bathe in, the one that gives the plain its name. A mind like the Ganges is a mind that is simply larger and cooler and deeper than the torches people bring to it. Not invulnerable, not cold, still moving, still flowing, still deeply alive, but not susceptible to being heated by small flames. There is something here in this third image that the first two do not quite say. The earth is still, the sky is still, the river moves. A mind like the Ganges is not a fixed or static thing. It is moving through time, flowing toward something, and precisely because of that movement, it is not afraid of the torch. The flowing itself is the answer to the flame. The fourth image, the catskin bag. This is the strangest one, and perhaps the most intimate. A catskin bag, the text says, a bag made from the skin of a cat, well worked, soft and supple. When a bag is first made from hide, it may be stiff, it may creak, it may still hold the shape of what it was before it became this. But a well-worked bag, one that has been kneaded and softened until every stiffness is gone, makes no sound. It rattles neither when struck with a stick nor when struck with a stone. It simply gives under the blow, absorbs it, and returns to its own shape, in silence. The Pali is Bhairabast, the soft, supple, silent catskin bag. Train to have a mind like this. And perhaps this is the most human of all four images. Not the vast and impersonal earth, not the infinite sky, not the great sacred river. A small, worked, domestic thing, a bag that someone made soft by working it over time with their hands. Something that was once stiff and is now pliable. Something that has been shaped by effort into a new quality, something that, precisely because it has been worked on, gives under pressure without making a sound. This is not born softness, this is cultivated softness. This is what patience and practice produce in a mind over time, not the absence of feeling, but the absence of the rattle. The blow still lands, the bag still receives it. But there is no noise. There is no protest that shakes the whole room and alerts everyone that a blow was received. There is only the soft, unhurried return to form. A mind like the catskin bag, 4 rungs, 4 images, each one pointing at the same condition from a different angle. The deep-rootedness of earth, the unstainable openness of sky, the unhurried flow of the great river, the worked, soft, quiet suppleness of well-kneaded leather. And now you have them. Set them beside you in the dark. You do not need to understand them or achieve them. They are images, and images work slowly, the way that water works on stone, not by force, but by presence and time. Let them simply be there, in the room, while you breathe. Which one, if any, felt like something you recognized? Which one, if any, felt like something you might want to grow toward? Not tonight, not by trying. Just, which one named something you have been quietly reaching for, without knowing that was what you were reaching for? The great earth, the open sky, the flowing river, the soft, silent leather. Take a breath. Let the body be heavy and warm. The teaching is patient. It will still be there when the breath is done, and the 5th rung is waiting. But we will reach it slowly in the hours ahead. Together, before we come to the 5th rung, we need to sit with something else. Something quieter than the saw, but in some ways more unsettling, because it is more ordinary. Something the Buddha said before he offered any of those images, earth, sky, river, leather, before he reached for a single metaphor at all. He gave a list, not a dramatic list, not a list of great wrongdoings or ancient crimes, a list of the ways that speech comes at you, the ways that other people's words arrive, the ways that the voice on the other end of a conversation, the voice in a memory, the voice you are still hearing at this hour, even though the room is quiet, the ways that voice can be characterized, sorted, understood, 5 ways. The Buddha names 5 ways that speech comes at you, and he does it methodically, the way a careful person goes through an inventory, one item at a time, making sure nothing is missed. Take a breath here. Let the shoulders drop. You do not need to hold on to what is coming. You only need to listen. The list will do its own work if you let it. The first pair. Speech may be timely, or it may be untimely. Kleiner, akleiner, timely or not timely. Most of us have a sense of what this means. We have felt the difference in the body. There is the remark that arrives at the right moment, when you asked for honesty, when you had the capacity to hear it, when the ground between you and the other person was stable enough to hold it. And there is the remark that arrives at the wrong moment, when you were already stretched thin, when you had not asked, when the wound it lands on was still open and had not yet begun to close. The same content, radically different timing. But the Buddha is not only talking about when something is said, he is also talking about readiness, about whether the moment has prepared the listener to receive the words at all. Timely speech is speech that meets the listener where the listener actually is, not where the speaker wishes the listener to be. It is speech that reads the room, or, more precisely, reads the inner room of the other person, and arrives accordingly. Untimely speech does not do this. It does not check. It does not wait. It arrives when it arrives, because the speaker had it to say, and that was enough. You can think of someone right now, probably, who speaks this way, who has always spoken this way, who has never seemed to notice that the moment might not be the moment. Words with no weather sense. Words that fall like hail, not because they mean to be hail, or even because they are hail in their content, but because they fall without regard for what they fall on. And here is the first small shock of the list. The Buddha does not say, respond one way to the timely speech and differently to the untimely. He does not say, for the words that arrived considerately, you may soften. For the words that arrived without care, you may harden. He does not sort the response according to how much consideration was extended to you. He says the same thing for both. He says it for all 5 pairs. The same instruction, the same words. The mind remains unaffected. No evil words leave the mouth. The heart abides in compassion for that person's welfare. Loving kindness without inner hate. We will come back to that. But let the first pair settle first. Timely, untimely, both arrive. The instruction waits patiently for both of them. Take a slow breath. Notice the quiet in the room. Nothing is being asked of you right now. You are only listening. The second pair. Speech may be true, or it may be false. Patena, abtena, true or not true. True speech is grounded in fact. It corresponds to something real, something that actually happened, something that can actually be verified, something that stands up when examined. It may still be painful. True speech can be the most painful kind, because you cannot argue your way around it. It arrived, and it was accurate, and the accuracy is what makes it land so hard. False speech is different. It invents, or it exaggerates, or it selects in ways that make the whole picture a lie, even when each individual piece claims to be true. False speech about you is its own particular wound, because it adds to the injury of the act, the further injury of a distorted story, a version of you that you do not recognize, walking around in the world, being accepted by people who do not know any better. There are people lying awake right now. You may be one of them, holding the knowledge that somewhere someone is carrying a false account of who they are and what they did. That the story being told does not match the event. That the version circulating is not them, and yet it bears their name. This is a specific and particular kind of suffering. It has its own texture, different from the suffering of a true accusation. The falseness is the extra layer. The falseness is almost worse than the harm itself, because it means you cannot even be seen clearly in the harm. The Buddha names this. He names it as one of the 5 kinds of speech that arrive. He does not pretend it doesn't happen. He does not say, only bother building a steady mind for the speech that is at least accurate. He names false speech as one of the things a person will encounter in this life, and he assigns it to the same instruction as all the rest. The same instruction. The mind unaffected. No evil words. Compassion. Loving kindness. You may have questions about this. That is allowed. Questions are not obstacles to the teaching. Questions are how the teaching enters. Let them sit beside you. We are not in a hurry. Rest here for a moment. Take a breath so slow that the lungs reach the bottom of their range, and then pause before the exhale. Just pause. And then let the breath come out in its own time. The night is long and patient. So is this. The third pair. Speech may be gentle, or it may be harsh. Sahena, farusena, soft or rough. Gentle speech is the kind the body receives without bracing. The tone is even, or warm, or at least neutral. The delivery is not designed to sting, even if the content is difficult, even if the words name something uncomfortable. The gentleness of the voice keeps the channel open, keeps the listener able to receive rather than to flinch and shut. Harsh speech is speech with edges. You know it the moment it arrives. Something in the tone, the volume, the choice of words, the rhythm of delivery, something in it is hard and angled. It is designed, at some level, to pierce, to stop, to make you feel the force of it and know that force was intended. Sometimes harsh speech is deliberate cruelty. Sometimes it is simply a person who has never been taught any other way to move through conflict and whose harshness is less a weapon than an inherited bluntness. But the effect on the listener is the same, and the body does not distinguish between the two. There is a particular kind of harsh speech that stays with a person. Not the shouted word that passes quickly, but the quiet, precise cruelty, the remark delivered softly, slowly, that finds the exact place where you are most uncertain about yourself and names it as though it were simply a fact being observed, as though nothing particular were happening. The cold precision of it is what makes it last. You can close a door on a shout. The quiet blade stays inside. The Buddha names both ends of this axis too. He was not sheltered from harshness. The people who came to argue with him came sharply. The monks who disagreed with him disagreed with force. He knew what it felt like to have words arrive hard and angled. He is not speaking from a life without edges. And yet, the instruction does not differentiate. Gentle speech, harsh speech, both arrive in a life. The response is the same for both. Not because the gentleness and the harshness are equivalent. They are not, and nobody here is pretending they are, but because the response the Buddha is naming belongs to you, not to the speech. He is describing what you cultivate, not what you deserve to receive. These are different things. They have always been different things. Tonight, in this hour, it may be worth remembering that they are different things. Your mind, your response, your own inner condition. These are the only territory the teaching ever crosses the border into. The speech arrives however it arrives. It will always arrive however it arrives, and in the space between arrival and your response, in that small, quiet, often overlooked space, there is something that belongs entirely to you. Take a breath. Let the body settle deeper. You have been listening carefully, and careful listening is its own kind of rest. The fourth pair. Speech may be beneficial, or it may be harmful. Athasahitena, anathasahitena, connected with good, or not connected with good. Beneficial speech does something useful. Even when it is uncomfortable, even when it names a failure or asks something difficult, it is aimed at the listener's well-being or at the well-being of others. It is speech that, when you trace it back to its source, grew out of some care, some wish that something should be better or clearer or more whole. Beneficial speech serves something. Even when it is hard to receive, you can feel, somewhere underneath it, that it was offered. Harmful speech serves the opposite. It does not come from a wish for your well-being. It comes from something else: frustration, contempt, the need to diminish, the desire to hurt, the want of power, or sometimes simply an indifference so deep that the speaker genuinely never considered whether the words would do damage. Harmful speech may not even mean to be harmful. But it does not mean to be good. It is untethered from that intention, and what is untethered from the intention to help is free to wander into harm without apology and without noticing. Most of the speech we carry at this hour, the kind that is still playing when the room is dark and quiet, Most of it falls somewhere in this fourth pair. We do not lie awake, replaying the speech that was timely and true and gentle and good for us. We replay the speech that we could not tell whose side it was on, or the speech whose side we knew too clearly, and that side was not ours. The Buddha places this on the list not to frighten, but to acknowledge. He is saying, yes, speech that is pointed at harm will arrive in your life. This is not a malfunction. This is not something that should not be happening to you. It is one of the ways the world speaks, and a mind that wants to be stable must be prepared to meet it. Not avoid it, not pretend it will not come. Prepare to meet it and remain unaffected, not untouched, but unbroken by. Unaffected is not unfelt. Let that be very clear, because it is easy to misread. The Buddha is not asking for numbness. He is not asking for the performance of not caring. He is asking that the mind not be turned toward hate by the experience of receiving harm. That is not the same as asking you to feel nothing. It is asking something far more specific and far more possible than nothing, that whatever you feel, it not curdle into the particular kind of inner poison called hate. We will say more about this, but for now, let the fourth pair rest. Beneficial, harmful, both arrive. The instruction does not change. Pause here with me. Take a breath slowly in and let it out even more slowly, as though you had all the time that exists. Because in this moment, in this room, in the quiet of this hour, you do. And the fifth pair, the last one, the one that may be the most direct. Speech may come from a mind of loving kindness, or it may come from inner hate, metasit, dosanta, with a heart of met, or with hate inside. This is the axis of intention. Not what the words said, not when they arrived, not how they were delivered, not whether they did good or harm, but what was living in the speaker's heart when the words were formed. What moved them? What sent the words out? Speech from loving kindness, from met, that Pali word we have touched before, that word for the wish that a being be well. That open hand of goodwill extended even before it is deserved, even before it has been earned, even before you feel warmly toward the person it is extended to. Speech from that place has something in it that is recognizable, even when you cannot name it. There is an orientation toward your flourishing somewhere inside it, however imperfectly expressed. You may not always like it. You may not always agree with what it says, but you can sense, if you attend to it carefully, that it is not against you. Speech from inner hate has something different in it, not always something loud. Hate can be quiet, hate can be measured and articulate and patient. Hate can dress itself in the language of concern and speak in calm tones and still carry, in its very centre, the wish that you be diminished. Reduced hurt, correctly placed in your position below the speaker. You have felt this. Many of us have felt this. The speech that came in reasonable words and left a wound you could not explain to anyone, because the words themselves looked fine on paper. But you felt what was underneath them. You knew what was underneath them. And you were right. The Buddha names this too. He does not wave it away. He says, some speech will come at you from a mind in which hate is living. This will happen. And when it does, when the words arrive and you can sense the hatred underneath them, or when you know very clearly, because it was not even disguised, that this person wanted you to suffer, the instruction is the same. The same words, the same training, the same direction. And this is the quiet shock of the list. This is the thing that may stop you short if you let it. At no point does the Buddha say, first determine whether the cruelty was fair. First calculate what you deserve. First sort the incoming speech by its category, and then calibrate your response accordingly. He does not say, for the speech that was at least timely, respond with this. For the speech that was at least true, respond with that. For the speech that was gentle, even if it was harmful, allow yourself a small reduction in the effort required. He gives no sliding scale. He builds no chart of deserved versus undeserved harshness, against which your response may be weighed and adjusted. He does not say that some suffering earns you the right to a harder heart. He does not say that the category of the harm changes what the heart needs to do. This is either the most demanding thing a teaching has ever asked, or it is something else entirely. We will sit with it. Take a breath. Go slowly. The night is not going anywhere. Neither are you. Because the thing to notice, and this is worth noticing, even in the dark, even in this hour, even when the mind is heavy, is what the instruction is actually pointed at, where it is actually aimed. The Buddha gives the 5 pairs, and for all 5 he says the same thing. And that same thing is entirely a description of your inner condition, your mind, unaffected, your speech, free of evil, your heart, in compassion for their welfare, your loving kindness without your inner hate. Not one syllable of it is addressed to the other person. Not one syllable asks you to evaluate their deserving, to adjudicate their sin, to arrive at a verdict about whether what they did was acceptable. The instruction is not pointed outward at all. It points inward, entirely, always. It is a description of the state of your own mind, and it is the only state that was ever yours to tend. This is not a small thing. This is the thing. There is a person in your life, or there was, or there is still, even if only in memory, even if only in the 2am replay, whose speech landed on you badly. Maybe it was untimely. Maybe it was false. Maybe it was harsh. Maybe it was aimed at harm. Maybe you could feel the hatred in it, the deliberate wish that you be less than you are, that you know your place, that you understand what you were worth in this person's assessment. And what you have been carrying in the months or years since that speech arrived is not just the speech. You are also carrying the question of what you should do about it. Whether you should have felt more. Whether you should have felt less. Whether the way it hurt you was proportionate, or whether it was too much or not enough. Whether the fact that you are still carrying it means something has gone wrong in you. You have been trying to figure out how to respond correctly to a speech that already happened. And nobody has told you the categories. Nobody has said which of the 5 pairs it fell into and what that implies for your response. And so you have been carrying both things, the harm and the unresolved question of how much the harm was supposed to hurt and what you are now supposed to do. The Buddha makes a list of 5 pairs not to help you sort the speech and calibrate accordingly. He makes the list to say, they will all arrive. Every variety will come. In a life. And in every variety, the one question that matters is not which category this is, but whether your mind has been turned toward hate. That is the only question with your name on it. Let that sit. Take a slow breath, in and out, in and out. The body knows how to do this without being told. It has been doing it your whole life, through everything. And now, the images. We touched them before, when the hour was slightly earlier, and the body perhaps not quite this heavy. 4 images, 4 rungs. The Buddha offered them, in the Sutta, like a ladder, not from easy to hard, because none of them is easy, but from vast to intimate. From the most enormous thing we can picture to the smallest. From the great earth underfoot to a piece of leather in a craftsman's hands. Let us go through them again. more slowly this time. Because images like these are not understood in a single pass. They are not information to be processed and filed. They are things to return to, the way you return to a piece of music that you know is doing something to you, even when you cannot say exactly what. They settle over time. They work in the body the way warmth works, gradually, without announcement, until you realize the cold has been gone for some time. So, slowly, the great earth, the pathav, the ground beneath everything, beneath the city and the village and the river and the forest and the mountain, beneath the sleeping and the waking and the living and the dead, beneath the argument and the cruelty and the apology that never came and the explanation that was never given. The ground beneath all of it, patient and uncomplaining, receiving everything that falls on it and released from nothing. Taking it all, the footstep and the digging and the refuse and the rain and the blood, taking it all without diminishment. The Buddha says, a man comes with a hoe and a basket, meaning to make the great earth be without earth. He digs, he scatters, he spits on the ground and urinates on it and says, be without earth. Be without earth. He cannot do it. The earth is too deep and too vast. The earth receives even his effort to destroy it. It takes the hoe into itself. It absorbs the scattering. The earth is not insulted by the hoe, because the hoe cannot reach deep enough to insult the earth. It cannot find the bottom of the earth's capacity to receive. A mind like this, a mind with that quality of depth, not a mind that does not feel. The earth feels everything, it receives everything, every weight and every drop and every blow. But a mind that is simply too deep to be used up by what falls on it. A mind that has more depth than the hoe has reach. This is the first image, and it is not offered as a performance, it is offered as a direction to grow toward, at whatever pace growth actually happens. Not tonight, not by trying tonight, not by wanting very hard in this dark room. Just a direction. Just a pointing. This way. There is something this way. Take a breath. Easy, the weight of the body settling into whatever is beneath you. And then the open sky, the ksa, the air above the earth, the space in which things move and change, and which itself is never changed. A man comes with dyes, meaning to paint a picture in the sky. He lifts his brush. He applies the colour. The colour falls. There is nothing for the paint to adhere to. The sky offers no surface. It is not that the sky resists the paint. It is that the sky has no quality of resistance at all. There is nothing there to push back. The paint falls through and is gone, and the sky remains exactly as it was. A mind like this, a mind that offers no surface for the things thrown at it to stick. Not because it is defended. A defence is a surface, a resistance, a wall, and walls can be broken, but because it has the quality of space, which is simply openness. Nothing adheres to space. Not because space fights the adhesion, but because there is no there for things to stick to. The insult passes through. The false story passes through. The harsh words and the timing that was wrong and the hatred underneath it all, these pass through the way that dye falls through the air, and space remains space. This is not indifference. Space holds things. Space is how things move and breathe and exist at all. But space is not harmed by what moves through it. The sky does not carry the previous weather inside itself as a wound. The sky that received the storm does not become the storm. A mind like the open sky. Rest here, let the breath be even. The room is quiet, the night is doing what nights do. And you are here, which is exactly where you are supposed to be. And then the river Ganges, the great gag, flowing steadily from the mountains through the plains and toward the sea, carrying everything and retaining nothing, always in motion, always itself. A man comes with a burning grass torch, meaning to scorch and dry up the river Ganges. He holds his torch over the water. The flame touches the surface. The river continues. You cannot dry up the Ganges with a burning grass torch. The river is too large and too constant. What the torch contributes is nothing. A moment of heat on the surface of something that moves too much to be burned. A mind like the Ganges, a mind that flows, a mind that does not hold still long enough to be scorched. A mind that is always moving, not restlessly, not in agitation, but in the way of rivers, which move because that is their nature, which carry what they carry and release it downstream, which are always arriving at wherever they are, and always in the process of becoming wherever they are going. What the man with the torch wants is to catch the river somewhere still, to hold it in place long enough that the flame can take hold. And the river will not be still. Not because it is trying not to be, rivers do not try, but because stillness is simply not in its nature. A mind like the Ganges is a mind that cannot be scorched, because it will not hold the flame in one place long enough for fire to find a foothold. The burning grass torch. The flame on the surface of the great river. And the river, flowing on. A mind like this. Let a breath move through you, in and all the way out, until the lungs are at the bottom of their range, then in again, as slowly as the body allows. You are not trying to do anything right now. You are resting, listening, receiving, and the fourth. The catskin bag. The Byrabast. We have been here before. But let us come back, because this one is different from the others. The earth is vast, the sky is infinite, the river is mighty. These are images of enormity. The catskin bag is small, it fits in 2 hands. It is not vast or infinite or mighty. It is just a piece of leather, carefully worked, kneaded and softened until every natural roughness has been addressed, until the material has become something that will receive a blow and make no sound. In the Buddha's image, a well-worked catskin bag is so soft and supple that it no longer rattles or rustles. If you strike it with a stick, it makes no sound. If you strike it with a stone, it makes no sound. The leather simply gives. The leather receives the impact and returns to its shape, and there is no noise, no protest, no report, no announcement to the room that something just happened. And this is perhaps the most intimate of the 4 images, because it is the one that has been made. The earth was already vast, the sky was already open, the river was already large. But the catskin bag is small, and it was worked on. A craftsman's hands did something to it over time. The softness is a product of attention and patience and repeated effort. This softness was cultivated. A mind like this, soft, quiet, receiving the blow and making no noise, is a mind that has been worked on. A mind that has been kneaded, over time, by practice. Not by one night of listening and wishing, by return, by the repeated bringing of attention back to what matters, by the small, patient, unglamorous work of deciding, again and again, not to rattle. This is both the hardest and the most hopeful of the 4 images. It is the hardest because it implies time and effort. It is the most hopeful because it implies that the quality is achievable. The earth's depth is beyond you. The sky's openness is something you can only gesture toward. The river's size is something you can only admire. But the catskin bag was once rough. It was worked on, and it became soft. That is something that happened, That is something that can happen again. The four images, earth, sky, river, leather, vast, open, flowing, soft, take a breath. Let the body be heavy. The mind has been doing a great deal of work tonight, and it is allowed to set some of it down. You do not need to hold the list. You do not need to remember the pairs, or the Pali words, or the exact sequence. You were not given this so that you could reproduce it. You were given this so that something in you could be quietly shifted by it, in the way that things are shifted by being in the presence of something true. The great earth, receiving everything, giving up nothing of its own depth. The open sky, holding everything, marked by none of it. The flowing river, moving always, too constant to be scorched. The soft, silent leather, worked on, patient, making no noise when the blow comes. These four are offered first, before anything else. Before the instruction becomes more demanding, before the teaching reaches its hardest image, and it will reach it in the hours ahead. Because there is one more thing the Buddha says, and it is the thing that gives this entire sutta its name. Before all of that, these four are given. Like a preparation, like a gift. Here, he seems to say, is what the mind can be. Here is the range of what is possible. Here are four ways of being stable that you can hold in the body like images and let the body slowly understand. You do not need to understand them with the mind. The mind is tired. The mind has been working since you lay down, turning things over, trying to arrive at resolutions, rehearsing conversations, constructing the speech you should have given and the speech they should have given back. The mind has been doing its restless, loyal, exhausting work. You can set that work down. Not forever, not as an answer, just for this part of the night. The earth is still there beneath you, deeper than the trouble. The sky is still there above you, holding the room without being troubled by it. Something in you flows, even now, even in the stillness. The breath moves, the blood moves, the life in you continues its patient, river-like motion even as you rest, and something in you is being worked on even now. Slowly, without announcement, the way that leather is worked, not by force, but by return, by the repeated, patient, quiet return of attention to what is true. Let a breath move through you, all the way in, and all the way out, and let the room be quiet. We will continue together. There is one more thing to reach, one more rung, and it is the one the sutta was named for. The one that sounds at first like the most impossible demand ever made. The one that gentle channels avoid because it frightens them. The one that, read carefully and slowly and without rushing past the exact words that are actually there, read in the way we have been reading everything tonight, turns out to be something else entirely. Something more precise, something more usable. Something that may, at last, give the name for what you have been trying to find a name for, since the person in your life said what they said and did what they did and left you here in the dark, at this hour still holding it. The fifth rung, the bandits, the two-handled saw. We will reach it. Slowly, together, but first, let the body be heavy. Let the eyes be closed. Let the four images settle into you the way that warmth settles, without effort, without announcement, simply by being in the presence of something that has heat. The earth, the sky, the river, the leather. Take one long, slow breath, and rest. We have come to it now. The fifth rung, the one the whole sutta was named for. the one that lends its name to the Discourse itself, to every manuscript copy, to every citation in every index of the Majjhima Nikaya, going back as far as anyone can read. The Kakacupama, the simile of the saw. And I want to read it to you slowly. Not quickly. Not in summary. Not paraphrased into something softer or more palatable. The version of this passage that has been in common use among English language readers of Theravada Buddhism, the version that serious practitioners and scholars turn to in the United States when they want the text in reliable, careful English, is the translation made by Bhikkhu Amoli and edited and completed by Bhikkhu Buddhi, published in 1995 by Wisdom Publications under the title The Middle-Length Discourses of the Buddha. That is the edition we have been drawing from tonight, and I want to read you the saw passage from that edition now, so that you hear it. Not a softened version, not a reassuring gloss, the actual words. Here they are. Bhikkhus, even if bandits were to sever you savagely limb by limb with a two-handled saw, he among you who let his heart get angered even at that would not be doing my bidding. And then the training that follows, even then you should train yourselves. Our minds will be unaffected, and we will say no evil words. We will remain sympathetic, with a mind of goodwill, and with no inner hate. That is the passage. That is the summit the whole discourse was climbing toward, and I want to sit with it for a while, unhurried, because there is something in it that is very easy to sprint past, and the thing that is easy to sprint past is the only thing that matters. Read the passage again, slowly, in your own mind. You don't have to do anything with it, just let it be present with you. Even if bandits were to sever you limb by limb with a two-handled saw. He who let his heart get angered at that would not be carrying out my teaching. Now let me ask you something. In that scene, the most extreme scene the Buddha ever described, the most violent image in the Pali Canon, who is the one who fails the test? It is not the bandits. The bandits are doing what they are doing. The Sutta does not dispute that. It does not call their act anything other than what it is. The word used to describe how they wield the saw is a word that means savagely, not reluctantly, not understandably. Savagely, the text is not softening the bandits. It is not presenting them as confused beings doing their best. They are doing something terrible. That is taken as given. But they are not the subject of the sentence that contains the test. The subject of the sentence that contains the test is you. He who gave rise to a mind of hate towards them would not be carrying out my teaching. In Pali, the key clause is Name sotena sanakaro. He is not a doer of my teaching, not a follower of my instruction. And that person, the one who fails, is not described as the one who commits the act. It is described as the one who hates about the act. The mind in that room that is being tracked by the instruction is yours. Your mind. What happens inside you while this event is occurring? That is where the entire teaching lands. Let that settle. The bandits own what they are doing. That is already theirs, already finished as a moral fact. The saw, the act, the savagery, those belong to them in the most complete sense possible. The Buddha does not give you any jurisdiction over those things. He gives you no instruction about how to evaluate what they deserve, or whether to declare their act wrong, or whether they should be stopped, or whether you should leave the situation or stay in it. None of those things appear in the passage. None. What appears in the passage is this: the only thing asked of you is that your mind not become corrupted with hate. That is the whole of it. That is the line. On one side of the line, their act, their conduct, the event they are creating. That is theirs. On the other side, the thing that happens in your mind about it, that is yours. And the Buddha is pointing, quietly and exactly, at only the second thing. Two events, one scene, two entirely separate moral facts, what they did, and what you become about it. Pause here for a moment, take a slow breath all the way in. Let the chest rise, let it fall. There is no hurry, you are lying down, the room is quiet, the night is patient with you. Breathe out. Slowly, what they did and what you became about it are two separate events, only one of them has your name on it. And it is the second one. Rest in that for a breath or two. Let it simply be present. You do not need to do anything with it yet. When you are ready, we will go on. Now there is something that this passage is not saying, and I want to name it clearly, because the thing it is not saying is very likely the thing you were afraid it was saying when you first heard the title of this discourse, or the first time someone told you that Buddhism teaches you to love the people who hurt you, or the first time someone said, gently and with the best of intentions, that the path to peace was forgiveness. The Kakacupama Sutta does not use a word that means forgiveness, not in Pali, not in any of the standard translations. Forgiveness, in the way the word is most commonly used in America as a transaction directed at the other person, a release of their debt, a declaration that what they did was acceptable enough to let go. That is not what this passage describes and not what it asks. The passage is not directed at them at all. This is worth saying again. The entire instruction is pointed inward, at the state of your own mind. The Buddha gives no verdict on what the bandits deserve. He does not say whether they should be punished or pardoned. He does not instruct you to feel warmth toward them, or to call their act understandable, or to release them from any consequence. He calls the act savage. He names the people performing it as bandits. And then he turns, not to them, but to you, and says, in the midst of this, keep your mind free of hate. That is the narrowness of the instruction, and its narrowness is exactly what makes it usable. Because the instruction that says forgive is very wide. Forgiveness asks you to travel a long distance through terrain that is hard to describe, toward a destination that many people genuinely cannot reach from where they are standing at 2 in the morning, carrying what they are carrying. And when they cannot reach it, the instruction becomes a weight. Another thing they are failing to do. Another evidence of their own insufficiency. Another reason to lie awake. The instruction in the Kakacupama Sutta is not wide, it is specific. It is narrow enough to actually hold, and it does not require you to travel anywhere toward the other person at all. It asks you to turn in the opposite direction, to turn toward the state of your own mind, and to ask, simply, am I carrying hate? Not, have I forgiven them? Not, do I wish them well in the sense of feeling affection for them? Not, have I called what they did acceptable? Just, is there hate in this mind, right now, and is that mine to put down? Let a breath move through you. Let it be slow and easy. This is where loving kindness, met, comes back in. Because the passage, after the saw, after the impossible scene, asks for something quite specific. It asks for met. And met is not what the word is sometimes translated as in popular settings. It is not warmth. It is not affection. It is not the feeling you have for someone you love. It is something more precise and in some ways more available than all of those. Met is the wish that a being be well, that a being be free of suffering, that a being be at peace, even a being who is doing something terrible. And here is the thing about that wish. When you turn it towards someone who has harmed you, You can wish that a person were free of the thing that drove them to do what they did. You can wish they were free of the anger, or the cruelty, or the smallness, or the fear, or whatever it was that turned in them and became a weapon aimed at you. You can wish that for them, genuinely, sincerely, without calling what they did acceptable, without wanting their company, without releasing them from any consequence, without pretending anything was fine. Wishing someone free of what made them cruel is not the same as saying the cruelty was fine. These are not the same thing. The Sutta holds them completely separate, and you are allowed to hold them separately, too. There is another thing the Sutta does not say that I want to name, because this is the misreading that causes harm, and that has caused harm to real people when this text is used carelessly. The Sutta does not say stay. It does not say remain in the presence of the harm. It does not say allow it to continue. The instruction governs one thing: the state of your mind. The state of your mind while you leave, if you leave, is also covered. The state of your mind while you protect yourself is also covered. The state of your mind while you name what happened as wrong is also covered. There is no prohibition on any of these. The Vinaya, the code of conduct the monastics followed, the formal institutional rules of the community the Buddha built, contains procedures for removing people who are causing harm. The tradition is not without response to wrongdoing. It knows how to say, this must stop, and here is how it stops. No hate is not no action. No hate is not no boundary. The Sutta draws one line, and only one line. The line is between the event that is theirs and the state that is yours. It does not draw any other line. It does not ask you to cross any line you are not able to cross. It asks you to stay on your side of the one line it draws. No hate in the mind. That is the teaching. Take a breath. Let the room be quiet around you. The air is still. The dark is soft. Whatever hour it is, wherever you are lying, you are safe right now. The body knows that. Let it rest in that knowing for a moment. And breathe out. Now, there is one more thing the Buddha says at the close of this discourse, and it is the most interesting thing he says, and I want to bring it to you slowly. After the saw passage, after the training has been given in its fullest, most demanding form, after the instruction has been placed at the most extreme case imaginable, after all of that, the Buddha turns to the monks and asks them a question. He says, if you keep this advice on the simile of the saw constantly in mind, if you hold this image, this ceiling, do you see any course of speech, trivial or gross, that you could not endure? And the monks answer, no, there is none. Now think about what he is doing there. Think about the geometry of it. He does not start at the middle and work toward the extreme. He goes directly to the worst case, the most violent, most prolonged, most savage act he can describe, limb by limb. Two-handled, pulled back and forth, he makes the ceiling impossibly high on purpose. And then he says, now tell me what falls beneath it. Everything falls beneath it. Every unkind word, every cold shoulder, every betrayal, every dismissal, everything that was said to diminish you, everything that was withheld, every time someone looked at you the way they looked at you and you felt yourself shrink, all of it falls beneath that ceiling. All of it is, by comparison, a lesser thing than the worst case. And since the instruction holds at the worst case, it holds at all the lesser ones by definition. This is not the logic of stop complaining because others have it worse. That is a different thing, and an unkind one. The Buddha is not saying your pain is small. He is not diminishing the thing that was done to you. He is doing something more useful. He is giving you a measure, a real, fixed measure, a ceiling so high that when you look up at it, the thing you are carrying, even if it is genuinely heavy, is still below it, and the instruction that applies at the ceiling applies with equal force to everything below. You don't have to match the saint at the saw. That is not what is being asked. What is being asked is for you to hold the saw in mind as the fixed point, the extreme case where the instruction still holds, and to understand that the thing you are actually living, whatever it is below that point, and so the instruction still holds, and so you are not being asked for something the instruction never reaches. Take a long, slow breath. The saw is the ceiling. Your situation is below the ceiling. The instruction that holds at the ceiling holds here. Breathe out. Slowly, let the breath go all the way. Let us pause here for a little while. This has been much to hold, and I want the body to be easy. Feel where the weight of you meets the mattress, the pillow, the surface that is holding you up. Feel that contact, solid and real. You are held. You do not have to do anything to maintain it. The surface is doing it without your help. Let the shoulders be heavy. Let the jaw be loose. If thoughts come, let them pass through the way weather passes through open space. You don't have to catch them. You don't have to argue with them. They can be present, and you can still be resting. These are not in conflict. Breathe in, slowly, and out, slowly. When you are ready, there is no hurry. We will come to the close of tonight's teaching. The last thing I want to offer you before you sleep. We have travelled a long way tonight through a very short text, and I want to walk back through it with you, the way you walk back through a house you've been in for the first time. Slowly, noticing what was in each room, not to remember it, but to feel the warmth of having been there. We began with the monk. Mollia Faguna. His fault was not cruelty. His fault was attachment that had curdled, the way things curdle when we hold them too tight. He had grown too close to the community of the nuns, the bhikkhunis, and when someone said a sharp word about them in his presence, anger rose in him. Fast and certain and full of itself, the way anger always is, when it has convinced itself it is righteous. And he quarrelled on their behalf. And they, hearing of it, quarrelled on his, and the Buddha summoned him and said, even if someone were to strike them with the hand, with a clod of earth, with a stick, or with a knife, your mind should remain unaffected, and you should utter no evil words, and you should abide compassionate for his welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. Out of that small, entirely recognizable human failure, defensiveness born of attachment, anger that believes it is protection, grew the most extreme image in the canon, because the extreme image was always latent in the ordinary failure. The bandits and the saw are just Mollia Faguna's anger, followed to its logical end. The mechanism is the same, only the scale is different. And then there was Vedahika, Vedahika of Enland, gentle Vedahika. Every neighbour said so. Kind, gentle, peaceful, that was her reputation. The word that followed her down the street. The word she wore like a comfortable garment. And she had a servant named Kali, skilled and diligent and quiet. And Kali tested her, because Kali was clever and wanted to know whether the gentleness was real or whether it was simply the garment that gets worn when nothing presses on you. She rose late. That was the whole test. She rose late. And Vedahika frowned. Just a frown, a small disturbance on the surface of her gentleness. And the next time, She rose later, and Vedehika spoke angry words, and the third time she rose late again. And Vedehika struck her on the head with the rolling pin, the agassi, and the skin broke, and the blood came, and Kali ran to the neighbours with her bloodied head, crying, "See the work of the gentle one." And the reputation was gone, and what was left was what had always been there underneath, waiting for the right pressure. A person is rightly called gentle only until disagreeable speech touches them. Until unwelcome, rasping things press against the surface. The gentleness that exists when nothing presses is not yet gentleness. It is only ease. It is only luck. The real measure is what emerges when the surface is pressed. That was Vedehika, and we all know someone like her, and we all know the days when we have been her. Then the Buddha listed the 5 ways speech arrives, timely or untimely, true or false, gentle or harsh, beneficial or harmful, with loving kindness or with hate, and for each pair, for every possible kind of speech that could come toward you, the instruction was the same. Unaffected mind, no evil words, compassion for the other's welfare, loving kindness without inner hate. The instruction does not sort by whether the cruelty was fair. It does not ask you to first evaluate whether the words were true or timely or gentle or well meant. That sorting might be interesting later, in some calm and rested future hour. But the instruction does not wait for the sorting. The instruction is the same whatever the result of the sorting, because the thing being guarded is not dependent on an evaluation of the other person. It is dependent only on you. Then, the 4 similes. The great earth. A mind that cannot be made to be without itself, no matter how anyone digs and scatters and spits, too vast to unmake by one person's effort. Let your mind be like that. So deep and wide that what is thrown on it simply becomes part of the surface without altering the depth. Open space. A mind that offers nothing for the paint to cling to. Not resistant. Not defended, simply without a surface on which to take the mark. What is thrown passes through and continues into the formless air. Let your mind be like that, empty enough that what comes at it finds nothing to adhere to. The river Ganges. A mind too great and moving to be scorched by one torch. The torch is real. The flame is real. And the river continues its patient movement, wide and deep, and going where it has always been going, not because it is unaware of the flame, but because it is too much river for one flame to alter. Let your mind be like that. The catskin bag, soft and supple, and worked to quiet. Struck with a stick, no sound. Struck with a stone, no sound, not because it is hard or defended, precisely because it is soft, the softness that has no brittleness in it, no rigid surface to crack or wring. Let your mind be like that. 4 images, earth, sky, river, leather, and then the saw. And from the saw, the one usable distinction. What they did, that is one event. It is finished. It belongs to them, fully and completely, the way everything a person does belongs to them. The Buddha does not ask you to evaluate it, or sort it, or reach any conclusion about it, or travel in any direction toward the person who did it. The event is theirs. You have no jurisdiction there. You never did. What you become about it, that is the second event. And it is yours, only yours. The hate you carry about what happened, the way it turns and returns in the mind, the way it was still there this morning when you woke up and will be there tomorrow morning if tonight passes without anything shifting, that is in your jurisdiction. That is the only thing in your jurisdiction. And the Sutta asks only for that. only for your jurisdiction, only for what was ever yours to give. He who gave rise to a mind of hate would not be carrying out my teaching. Not he who named the harm as harm, not he who protected themselves, not he who left, not he who sought remedy or consequence, not he who refused to call the act acceptable, he who gave rise to hate in his own mind. Nami sotena sanakaro. That person is not a follower of my instruction. Not because hatred is unnatural, not because it is shameful to have felt it, but because it is yours. It is yours, and it is doing something to you, and you have been carrying it on your behalf in the night, in the dark, in the hours when it cannot be put down, and the only thing the Buddha says tonight, the only thing he has ever said about this, is that the carrying is also a choice, and that it is yours to put down. Not for their sake, for yours. Breathe. Let the eyes be closed, the jaw loose, the hands open, the chest easy. There is something I want to say about what the Sutta does not ask, one more time, because I want it to settle clearly before you sleep. It does not ask you to call what happened fine. He calls the bandits savage. The text does not pretend they are gentle people having a difficult morning. They are doing something terrible, and the word used is not soft. What happened to you, whatever it was that brought you to this hour, the thing a specific person did, the words they said, or the silence they kept, or the way they looked at you, or stopped looking at you. The Buddha is not asking you to name that as acceptable. He never asked anyone to name harm as acceptable. The instruction is not, pretend it was fine. The instruction is, do not give them a second act to perform in your own mind. They had their act, in the world, in real time, with their hands and their words and their choices. That was their act. It is complete. It is over. It exists as a finished thing in the past. The second act, the one that plays out in the mind at 2 a.m, in the dark, on an endless loop, going over it again and for what purpose, arriving at the same place every time, that is not their act. They are not the ones performing it. You are performing it, inside your own mind. And the Buddha notices this, quietly, without judgment, and says, I see the performance. And I know you did not ask for it, and I know it arrived because something real was done to you. And I am not asking you to forgive them for it. I am asking you something narrower than that. I am asking you whether the second performance is one you want to continue. That is the question at 2 a.m. Not, was I wronged? The answer to that may be yes, clearly and without contest. Not, should I forgive? The Sutta does not ask this, not, should I feel warmth for the person who did this. Met is not warmth. Met is a wish. You can wish a person free of the thing that made them cruel without any warmth at all, without contact, without proximity. From where you are lying right now, in the dark, with the door closed, you can wish it the way you might wish bad weather away, not because you love the weather, but because clear skies are better for everyone. The question is simply, is the hate mine, and am I done carrying it tonight? You don't have to answer tonight. The teaching does not give a deadline, but it gives you a name for what you have been carrying, and a name for what you might, when you are ready, choose to put down, not for them, for the mind that has to wake up tomorrow and live in the same body that has been carrying it. Take a long breath, slow and complete, and let it out. Let us rest here. This is where tonight's text has brought us. And I want to let the room be quiet for a little while before we close. Not because there is more to say, but because there is something that happens when language stops and the teaching simply sits in the air, something the words pointed to but couldn't quite reach, and the quiet can reach it. So let the quiet do its work. The breath moving, in and out, the body heavy and held, the mind wherever it is allowed to be wherever it is. We have been in the company tonight of a very old text, the Kakacupama Sutta, the 21st Discourse of the Majjhima Nikaya, a few pages long in the original. A text that a monk named Amoli, born Osbert Moore, a British man who took robes and spent his life with these words, translated carefully and faithfully, and that Bhikkhu Bodhi, born in Brooklyn in 1944, edited and brought to completeness in a volume that has been in the hands of American readers since 1995. A few pages, and yet tonight we have walked through it for hours. Because it deserves that. Because it is dense with care. Because the man who composed it understood something very specific about the mind that wakes at night carrying someone else's act and keeps performing it. He understood this because he had watched it for decades in forests and monasteries and the company of people who were trying and failing and trying again to do the hard, quiet work of becoming less tangled. And what he said is this, not my paraphrase, the text itself. Even if bandits were to sever you savagely limb by limb with a two-handled saw, he among you who let his heart get angered even at that would not be doing my bidding. He set the ceiling impossibly high, so that you could stand underneath it and see that everything you are carrying is below the ceiling. And the instruction that holds at the ceiling holds here, below the ceiling, where you are, where the harm was real and the hour is late, and the mind keeps returning to it. The instruction holds here. No hate, not no pain, not no grief, not no acknowledgement that something wrong was done, not no boundary, no protection, no naming of it as harm, no hate. That is the only thing. And hate, when you look at it directly, is not the same as pain. Pain is what happened to you. Hate is what you do with it at 2 a.m. They arrive together, because pain often brings hate with it the way thunder brings lightning. But they are not the same thing, and they do not have to stay together. Pain can remain, honestly, without denial, and hate can be put down. That is the distinction. That is what this old text was trying to say. Across 25 centuries and whatever distances between you and a grove in the valley of the Ganges, where a man sat and watched his students and noticed that they were suffering in a very particular way, what they did, and what you became about it. 2 events. One of them is finished and belongs to someone else. The other one is here, in this room, in this body, in this mind, and it is yours. And you can, when you are ready, put it down. Not because they deserve your peace. They don't have to deserve anything for you to choose peace. Your peace is not a reward you hand out. It is a condition of your own mind. It belongs to you. It was always yours. They took something from you once. Don't let them go on taking, in your own mind, in the dark, in the hours when you could be sleeping. Put it down. Not tonight, if tonight is too soon. The teaching does not give a deadline. But know that putting it down is available. Know that the text says so. Know that the instruction was placed at the highest possible case, the saw, the bandits, the severing, limb by limb, and that your situation, whatever it is, however real, however heavy, is below the ceiling, and so is mine. Take a slow breath. Let it move through the body the way water moves through ground, all the way down, and let it go. Tonight we have met a monk who loved too protectively and quarrelled on behalf of his attachment. We have met Vedahika, whose gentleness held until it was pressed, and Kali, who tested it and showed what was underneath. We have watched the great earth receive what it receives and remain the earth. We have watched open sky take no paint. We have felt the river go on in the presence of a single flame. We have held soft, supple leather that makes no sound when struck. And we have sat with the saw, slowly, in the words as they were written, in the wording that has been the standard American translation for 30 years. You do not need to remember any of it. If one image stayed with you, the leather, the river, the two events, the ceiling and what falls beneath it, let that be enough. If nothing stayed, and you only feel a little more settled than you did when you arrived, that is also enough. That is exactly enough. The teaching does not require your memory. It only ever asked for a moment of your attention. And you gave it that. For a long, quiet night's worth of hours. And that was generous. That was more than enough. Let the body be heavy. Let the eyes stay closed. The breath will continue on its own. The heart will continue. The quiet will hold you through what is left of the night. Whatever person you have been carrying, they are far from this room right now. And whatever they did is in the past, where all finished things live. And what you become about it from this night forward, that is still being written. And you have time. And you have rest. And you have, if you choose to hold it, one clear distinction to carry into tomorrow. Their act. And yours. Theirs is done. Yours is not yet done. And that means yours is still open, still changeable, still in your hands. Sleep well. We have come to the end of our time with this old text, and I am glad we came. I am glad you stayed. I am glad the night brought you here, to this room, to this voice, to a discourse so extreme and so precise that gentle channels avoid it, because what it contains, when you sit with it slowly and read the actual words, is the most useful thing I know of to hold at 2 a.m. when someone has hurt you, and you cannot sleep. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, not warmth for someone you are not ready to feel warmth for. Just what they did is theirs. What I become about it is mine. And I can, when I am ready, put mine down. That is all. That is the whole of it. That is the Kakacupama Sutta. Subject closed for the night. Let it all relax away.